tonight. First thing on the agenda that we are going to do is a reserve fund transfer. So, Linda, what do you have for us?
I think Jennifer's got it.
Oh, Jennifer, what do you have for us?
Hi there. Yes, this is a reserve fund transfer. It's actually a Board of Health expense, but it got lost in the shuffle between the changing of boards, changing of employees, and it was brought to our attention in March that the town had not paid for the Pioneer Valley Mosquito Control District funding for the last 2 years. So I'm submitting a reserve fund transfer to for $10,000 to cover FY. I want to make sure I say it right. FY22 and FY23. This has been added to the Board of Health's budget for FY24. Linda had brought that to your attention when I was given the invoices from the Board of Health that had not been paid. So this will bring us to the right with the Pioneer Valley Mosquito Control District, and it's budgeted for next year. So I'm asking for a reserve fund transfer of $10,000 to the Board of Health line. And do you need the account number, or is it just enough to know? Linda? Unmute yourself first.
I love the facial expressions.
All right. Jennifer, I think it's just for 5,000 because with 22, we do have it on the warrant to pay as a prior year invoice.
I apologize.
So look, you just saved them some money. They should be happy. Yeah, so it's the 5,000. Yeah, ironically, we had 3 years and we had to handle them 3 different ways. We had to do prior year bill this year and then project it for next year.
I completely messed that up. So if I adjust the form, then would y'all approve it for $5,000, please?
If I could just get a motion for that.
I'll make a motion to approve the fund transfer for $5,000 for the mosquito control bill.
Sorry, I'll second it. I was muted for the motion, sorry.
Okay, I'll roll call that. Paul,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well.
And Shardul is on.
Oh, okay. And he's just popped. There we go. Shardul, we're just voting on a reserve fund transfer for the mosquito control Board of Health expense, and there's a motion on the table in a second.
Okay, I approve.
Okay. All right. So that's unanimous.
And David, I don't suppose that you would authorize me to use that select board stamp of your signature to stamp the reserve fund transfer for the finance committee too.
I certainly would.
Thank you. And thank y'all for that. And Linda, thank you for correcting me. I knew there was 10,000 to be had, but I forgot we had to do it 2 ways.
Yep. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And then next on the agenda, I believe we are just discussing the budget, right? And going over the warrant.
What did you want to do first, David? Do you want to do the warrant or the budget?
Let's do the budget first because that may change the warrant. Maybe, don't know, but just in case.
Right, which is why I gave you the sheet, which I hope you had a chance to look at, which shows the total use of free cash during the entire meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So the budget being a part of it, but there's 3 other financial articles.
Yeah,
So,
and I saw what you mentioned about the delaying for OPEB until we get a good grasp of what we have later in the year for revenues. And I think that's a good idea. I don't know how everybody else feels on that. Maybe help us to wean off of the free cash usage a little bit, but I mean, let's hear from everybody.
Yeah, we've talked about that strategy.
Recording
We-
in progress.
Sorry, it's because I transferred it to you.
Oh, got it.
Got it.
Yeah, we talked about that strategy earlier, and that sounded like a prudent one, given what we're looking at going after to balance things at this meeting.
I think it's helpful, but at the same time, I think it's something we have to be really careful about, because I want us to go, yes, we want to move it in the right direction, not using more free cash, right? But at the same time, that is something we know we're going to have to do in the fall, because if we don't do it, it's going to start putting us in a bad spot. Because we really need to get that OPEB. We don't want to go, it was so important for us to do it for so long. I don't think we need to do the 220, but it is something that is going to be coming out. So it is something that it's not like I don't know. I do have mixed feelings about doing the whole thing. I mean, I definitely think that we should put some of it, but as far as the whole thing goes. And then at some point, I do have a question when it comes to the warrant and the budget. There is something on the warrant, such as the 25,000 going to do with employees. And I thought we had something aside at 1.2 for employees with the let's see, the HR. So I have some questions regarding some of those things.
Linda, can you go over, I guess, the proposal of how much we would be contributing to OPEB? Would we be holding off on the entire amount for now until the fall town meeting? Or are we going to hold off on most of it and see what happens? What are you thinking?
Well, it's really up to you. Our budget's not complete until we do the final decisions for fall town meeting. We did have 170,000 for last year. And I think it was 120, I don't have it in front of me. I think it was 120,000 the year before. So we cut it back quite a bit during COVID. And then we started climbing up again. So what I'd like not to see is a decline, you know, like turning around and going back. I'd like to see at least an even, and I don't think that it matters that much whether it's done in the spring or the fall town meeting. I've been what I was trying to do is address concerns that have popped up, and from individually from both finance committee and select board members about whether we could wait. Should we wait and see if things? And I'm kind of neutral on it, honestly. I agree that I don't want it to come off to stay off and say, well, this is optional, so we don't really need to do that. I don't consider it optional, but I do see the benefit of waiting and seeing where we stand in the fall. I think, I was talking to Carolyn earlier today, we're actually feeling pretty good about where the revenues are going to be, but we can't show you that until we can't prove that right now. We can't demonstrate it adequately to say, don't worry, it's fine. We have a number of uncertainties between now and fall. I think a little bit more than we usually do. I don't know, coming out of COVID, I guess nothing's been usual for several years. So I don't know, David. It's if you saw the sheet, if we fully fund the budget and we fully fund the requests on here that are on the meeting, we're left with $100,000 in free cash, which is more in free cash than we ever used to have. That doesn't mean there aren't legitimate concerns with the amount that we're using in one swipe, not knowing what our certified free cash is going to be on June 30th. And though I think this is still the way we need to go in funding all of this, I don't see any harm in parking some of it aside and say, let's just be sure and let's look at it again in fall. So it really, I think, depends on your comfort level, what you think that you want to do, and if you have been speaking individually with any select board members, what you think is going to work with them. I think it'd be nice if you were all in an agreement with one way or another.
What's the supposed to be used and what was the OPEB contribution?
Okay, if you go to your form, that is the Finance Committee worksheet. I use the top square, which is the funding one. It says administrator's budget and Finance Committee budget. But since you don't have a budget yet, I've used your column for the town administrator's updated budget. Therefore, the original one is in that blue column, number 2. So we were initially planning 875,000. Now we're close, almost 900,000, honestly. So it's about a 25,000 increase. Various things that have happened, including the Board of Health. And I think I had a listing in there in the email of the adjustments that have needed to be made since then. So I certainly understand it doesn't look like we're going in the direction that you wanted it to go in. So I'm trying to be a little more conciliatory about what things, what is your comfort level? What is it that you want to do? So we actually are using 25,000 more in the recommended budget than was in the initial. Now, another part of that is that we took an article off that was $80,000 on the officer and put it into the budget. So that's really something that isn't a genuine 20, it's not really an increase overall. It just an increase because we put it in the budget as opposed to an article, and we reduced it quite a bit. We may have to visit that again in the fall. That's another unknown for us about how long that will be carried for.
Linda, I didn't understand when you said you put it, you said there was $80,000, but I guess I just didn't understand it when I was reading it. So the officer is $80,000, but you only
Yes.
put 20 of it back.
Right.
So
we
the
put
60, you're saying it has to come in the fall?
We will look at it for the fall. Yes, the explanation is that the 80,000 was a full year's salary, which gets covered, which is not necessarily covered with his own benefits. It depends on how many people contribute a part of their sick leave. So how long it extends for. So he will be paid throughout his own benefited time, plus the time that's contributed to him from other people's sick time. So we don't know that figure, and it didn't seem right to budget for an amount that we weren't necessarily committed to pay at this point. But that's, again, we'll look in the fall and see where we are with that. But we're pretty confident, he's pretty confident that we're going to get through the first quarter with contributed time and his own time.
So here's my issue with some of those, like such as OPEB and this one, by pushing this off to the fall, even though, I mean, that's great and all because we don't have to do that now, but as it is, those are things that we're going to have to do. Those are every year. So that 80,000 is in the police budget every year. Yes, maybe we're not. And normally if he doesn't use it, it just goes back into free cash. But the years that he does use and everybody is working and everything is great, we need that police budget is going to be increased by that full 80,000 every year. So it's just, can we make this budget work? Is because we're doing great in free cash. Yeah, we can make this budget work. It's the next year and the year after that and the year after that when our budgets are getting higher and higher and our free cash will probably be getting lower and lower. And I'm worried about that. And so, yes, we could push this off because we know he's not going to use it and it won't go back to free cash, but the year after that, he probably will. And so those kind of things, just like the OPEB, we're going to need to get that in there, right? It's important. So even though we're just pushing it off. So it's just, I'm just nervous about the future years. And so I'm trying to keep it as tight as possible. That's my thought.
Well, we're pushing it off, but it's also fundable based on the cash that we have already. And the benefit, and this isn't really something that I had clued in on, but I was told by, the select board members that there is a benefit to having a healthy free cash certification in the middle of the year. you know, that we've got something more to work with. I don't know, Amy.
So just so I don't have to pull it up and lose my connection again.
Yep.
The free cash for last year that we used was what?
Oh, for last year. Does someone have it there?
Yeah, we used 474,099. And then we had 400 from ARPA, the same,
Okay, so basically
several
874.
free cash.
It was basically the same, although it wasn't free cash, but it was basically the same supplement to the revenues as this year, which is an improvement, which means, well, it's technically an improvement that the revenues are catching up with us, and we hope that will continue. And I hope we can demonstrate that before the special town meeting.
So just so that way we can, you know, I'd like to, I guess, chop it even more, but that's tough to do with what we have to do. So if we dropped our free cash utilization to say 800,000, you know, not contributing to OPEB at this point, what would that drop our contribution down there?
So you want to take almost 100 out of what's been recommended. It would bring if you're taking it all out of OPEB, and another option I gave you is taking a bit out of your reserve. Let's go ahead. If you take it all out of OPEB, that puts us as contributing 120,000 to OPEB.
Okay. What if we did that well, okay, so what if we did like 75 out of less of 75 less of OPEB, and then also removed our 25,000 from our reserve fund? And I guess what I'm getting at, I want to show a positive trend in the OPEB contributions by the end of the year, and I also want to show a positive downward trend in the free cash utilization. So that's what I'm trying to balance.
So if you're looking for something that would be a permanent, but you're saying you want to say something that you can live with without making any changes. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I mean, if you have an idea for that.
Well, you kind of just said it. If we go back to, if we level fund OPEB at 170, that's 50 out. And if you take 25 out of your reserves, that's 75 out. Now you're down to using 825,000 in free cash.
And then I think, you know, with if, and I'm not saying these are the numbers, feel free to chime in, guys, but you know, I think if we, I guess, made the promise that we would look hard, you know, by the end of the year to fully get up to where we need to be with OPEB, I think, and convey that to the select board as well as town meeting, I think that'd probably go a long way as well. It's kind of like when we borrowed from stabilization during COVID, and we, you know, the select board made the pledge that we'd pay it back, and you know, it took a little while, but we did pay it back, plus more.
Yeah, I think doing it, level funding it is very respectable, even if you leave it there, knowing that we're hoping to get up there again the following year.
I
Thoughts, anybody?
prefer to see it level funded myself.
I would go up a little bit. I would go to 170, 75 or 180, just to get it, just to show we're increasing it. And I think that will help us down the road. It'll just keep us on that path. And I don't want us to get into level funding every year. With that, it's an obligation that we need to, you know, we've been a commitment to try and get to. So I would rather see a slight increase if we could. I don't think that's going to change things that much. Because it's going to be very easy in the fall to just keep level funding. And then next year we're going to be in the same boat. I mean, the bottom line is that we also have increased expenses on personnel. We have, you know, cost of COLA in all the categories. You know, and yet we are in many ways holding funding back as much as possible. And anybody who's running a business or who's running a household knows that their expenses have gone up. And we're doing our best to keep taxes from increasing here. But there is a reality of, we have to find this money. And I think I think what we've done is very tight. I think if we go into the fall and revenues are up because of, again, increases in recovery in our market, restaurants, hotels, and so on, our sources, then we'll be able to, fill in some of the gaps that we're holding back on right now. Or use less of free cash in the end and retain the free cash into the next year.
I think that's a great idea. 180 sounds good to me. I mean, at least we're showing a positive trend to, the bond rating people and credit
Yeah,
rating people.
I just think we should go up a little bit to show that we're committed to getting back to where we should be. Do you need a motion for that?
I think Amy had something as well, or no?
I'm sorry, Amy.
Well, I mean, well, I don't necessarily, do you want to do the whole thing and do one motion at the end
Sure.
on what we look at, or you just wanted to take each item together? Because my other question had to do with the HR and the personnel.
Why don't we do a motion on the OPEB change and do one at a time, just so we don't get all confused for the minutes and whatnot.
Okay.
If that's okay.
All right, so I'll make a motion to increase the OPEB to 180. Or is it reduce it from 220 to 180 actually? I believe what it is, or to set it at 180.
Right.
Say it that way.
So move.
Okay, motion by Paul, seconded by, was that Shardul?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, second by Shardul. Do a roll call. Amy,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Shardul,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Okay. And then Amy, HR, you want to talk about?
Wasn't there, I thought it was an HR. I might be
Yes.
wrong, but I thought you were adding some extra money in HR because you said someone was retiring, and that's where you put some money because they were retiring. But then I thought that we have something on the warrant for people that are retiring. So that's
Right.
my confusion. I think we have it in 2 spots.
It is in 2 spots now. You are right. So we did the budget first, and I wasn't sure what the wording was going to be, and I worked with town council and got the statutory support for setting up the buyback account. The amount, I've just gone to the HR budget, the amount that's in there for the current year is 3,690. So when I go over to the buyback, so I wasn't sure if you and the select board were going to fully support this article. We need to pay the employee when she leaves. So it is in 2 places, as in, if we take out of the budget and the buyback article passes, we can pay it from that article. Or we can leave it in the budget and we can reduce that article by $5,000 and free cash wise be in the same place. If it's important for you to come out of the budget, then maybe you should jump over and decide whether you are planning to support the buyback fund contribution. Budget at all, it can come out of the HR. It can be removed because we will be paying them out of this fund.
I mean, either way, it's going to end up coming out of free cash, whether it's from a buyback fund or it's coming out of the budget. Basically, it's going to be free cash is what it
Right.
impacts.
Exactly.
Okay. Thoughts, guys, on buyback fund or?
I'm just trying to find the article. What was the article number?
21.
I just got to it.
And I put in 25,000. You can do it with 10. I mean, this is an easy place. The point is to get it going. This is another one that our what has accrued for employees to pay them when they leave for unused sick and the other absences.
Unused vacation, sick leave.
Thank you, vacations, that's the other one. Sick and vacation time is actually an unfunded liability. It's a liability the town has, but it's not accounted for anywhere. And so this is another good thing, like giving to you, contributing to OPEB and maintaining the other balance funds that we have. This is another good thing to do. Start building up the buyback fund so that when, if at such point as we are required to carry unfunded liability for buybacks on the accounts, that we have a plan in place. And I also was mindful of the fact that if we're not going gung-ho on the OPEB plan that we had set up a few years ago, that it's another thing to say, we're really aware of our entire situation and we are addressing everything best we can.
So for the buyback fund, if
Mhm.
that passes, and let's just say we put $10,000 into there,
Mhm.
and let's just say we have nobody retire for that year, does it stay in the fund or does it roll back
Yes.
to free cash? Okay.
Yeah,
And
that's
David,
the
that's the good part of that. So it doesn't go into an individual budget. And then we forget about it and it stays in that budget from year to year. This keeps it really clean and keeps the individual departments steady.
Andy?
Well, in that case, it makes sense that it should be visible on the budget itself rather than doing it in warrant articles.
Yeah.
Contributing it to it perennially, or at least time and time again. It's good to have it out there and have it visible rather than warrant articles, which can get lost as we go forward. So
But
anyway,
is the warrant though to establish the buyback?
any amount of money.
Or
Yes.
do it now and say that the funding establishing the actual,
Mm-mm.
yes,
Departments, this, by having a separate warrant article, it keeps it consistent. It keeps it so it's not bumping up artificially every year, the regular budget.
Bank that they can draw from. Doesn't impact their annual budgets, essentially. So it should be something, it's really it's not an operating action. I mean, establishing it is, we're not going to establish it annually. It's going to get established this year. And then departments can draw from it. And it really shouldn't be, I guess, I mean, it's a one-time thing. To me, it doesn't seem like it should be on an annual budget.
but I thought the intention here was that this was going to be like OPEB, another unfunded, it's an unfunded liability that we need to contribute to against in the future. And if we're only funding it through warrant articles, it's not like we're really building up this fund to plan for it. It's going to be a bigger hit here and there when somebody retires and you have to pay off the PTO.
So Andy, so I think I understand what you're saying now. You're suggesting that the buyback fund be a line item down with the benefits right below OPEB, for example.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So so round one, we have to set it up by warrant
right,
article. And then round two for 25, let's see if we can get it into as a line item in the benefits and insurance category as something to give to each year.
The contribution will be annual.
That's.
Not,
Yeah, the contribution will
that's
be
what it
annual.
is. Yes.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the draw is periodic,
Right.
And what's the I guess the average retiring employee, what are they owed as far as a payout when they typically leave? It
So
probably great.
It depends their position, how long they've been there. We had a retiree this year that's been with us for probably over 30 years. It's going to be significant. It'll be around 25,000. The one that we're budgeting for next year, and I do a memo out to say, if you have anticipating anybody, we don't always know, but the only one we're anticipating now is a part-time position and it's only 3,500. So it's very fluid. It just it's hard to predict.
Yeah. So in that case, why don't we, instead of 25, why don't we seed that fund with maybe 10 grand? And then in the budget in future years, we can put 5 or 10 grand a year in there. And I think we'll build up slowly that way.
Right.
And
And I'll know each year, if I need to say to you, you guys need to put a bigger number in, we can do that.
Right. And another benefit is you're keeping employees on anonymity too. When you see a
Right.
big bump in a particular budget and you go, which budget is that? Oh, which employee is that? And it really kind of shines the light on somebody when it's something that really shouldn't be necessarily a public discussion.
Right.
So I that's actually something that I really like about it is that, and as Jules said, it's really not part of the, let's call it, let's say it's in the, in the highway budget. And by putting in an extra 15,000 in the highway budget next 1 year to cover that, you're not getting an extra $15,000 worth of services out of highway. It's really not serving the operations of that department. It's just a payment. It should be out of the benefits section of what the town pays, just like the retirement and the health insurance and the various other things. So I like it that way.
So Carolyn, just to go back to the future liability, so the next for 24, you're expecting it to be 3,500, or I know you said 25,000 was, is that,
This year. That's gonna be this year.
so that's already, okay, so that's this, you're not gonna draw.
I'm talking about, the budget you're looking at is for that smaller one, the 3,500.
Okay, all right. No, I just,
Again, sometimes you can get a retirement that wasn't expected and they could have been here for a long time. In the next 3 years, we are going to have to build up that account.
to what, to
And
what,
we're having a succession plan being completed that will reinforce that, but I already know within the next 3 years, you're gonna have to build up that account. You have
to what level?
Higher level, much higher level.
Like
50,000.
estimated, like,
Within a 3-year period, starting in about 3 years, you're gonna be up in the 30, I would say 30,000.
It's not
Okay,
like,
then.
it's not OPEB.
That's
Right.
not OPEB. That's
Nope, not on OPEB
vacation and
so
sick time and-
manageable levels.
Okay. Sue has her hand up.
Yeah, the vacation time that you can take and the sick time that you can take is limited. So it depends on where the level of salary is what you're looking at. It technically can be, I mean, you can mathematically estimate that.
My concern was just if we reduce it to 10,000 or less than 25,000, that we're gonna have to very quickly put money into it just because the future liability, the short-term liabilities for that is higher than what's in there. That was my concern.
Right, and the other consideration is, you will have hopefully people starting and training while people who are leaving are there.
Yeah.
So you kind of double up on that too.
But as far as the list of what can wait until fall, this is pretty high on that list that can wait for additional funding. So
Right.
it might be something we revisit. So if you do want to knock it down to 10, maybe then we'll have good figures for special town meeting. We'll have an estimate of what our total, what we might need over the next few years. And we might decide for special town meeting, you might decide that we want to add 25,000 at that point, knowing what our overall situation is.
HR question here, though, is that something that you guys can calculate? I know it's subjective because you don't know
Yes.
if people are
Sure, you can
using it,
calculate that.
but
Yes,
you have a carryover number, so you can estimate that liability or have a pretty good handle on it. And then if Carolyn is getting projections out there, at least we can plan this. It's just not, granted, there's always unforeseen elements that might occur, but at least if we understand what the scope of the liability.
Yep.
As David said, it's not open scale, but
Yeah. It is actually something that Jones Isco needs to calculate annually for our audit. But our total is not the same as what Carolyn is talking about, what's coming up in the next 2 or 3 years. So it's the total is something that's carrying, but they're going to be coming in a different order and over time. And
Yeah.
so I think that's the part that we need time on.
Yeah, I'm not
So we-
suggesting we build up a, a bank account against everybody's PTO, but I mean, it would be if you can, give an annual cost average or what the plan is, at least we can have a target number of where we want to be.
Yeah, part of our compensation and succession plan is gonna give us that idea. We have to do the calculations, but it's gonna give us a projected idea of what that succession, it'll give us an idea of who's retiring. So it's gonna be a really helpful number, but I think it's gonna be a little alarming, especially as we rehire.
So I guess what we need is a motion to set the seed money amount for this account, and then, it'll, I guess in the FY25 budget, that it'll be under the liability section, a line item for contributions in the future, Linda?
Yeah, that's a good idea. I hadn't really thought of it, but I think, I was thinking we do it by article, but you're right, Andy, that we should treat it that way.
So, David, are you suggesting that we make a motion to amend the Article 21? And the warrant?
Yeah,
'Cause
that
that's
was
where
kind of,
that's where the seed money is right now, right?
right, yeah, that was kind of my feeling of,
Mhm.
since we're only at 3,500-ish maybe this year, let's save some of that free cash for now that
Mhm.
is gonna be paying that bill, and maybe I had 10, but I'm not saying that's the number. I just, someone else throw a number out, and we can add it as a line item in liabilities for FY25.
But we still need the article to start it.
Right.
We have to set up the fund.
All right, I'll make a motion that we change the amount of funding for the employee compensation fund for Article 21 from 25,000 to 10,000.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion by Andy, second by Amy. Any other discussion on that? Okay, roll call, Amy.
Yes.
Okay, Andy,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes,
Chardul,
Yes,
and I'm yes as well.
We don't need to make a motion to put that as a line item in next year's budget, is that right?
Not yet.
No.
Yeah. Man, I'm gonna have to put my sunglasses on in this meeting. Sun's going down, blinding me. All right, so what's the next item? Any other sticking points that we need to address?
I would like to understand the 30, in your notes, the additional 30,000 to the DPW. Sorry, I did.
Linda,
Carolyn.
no, what I'm saying is I just realized my workbooks and I don't have my workbook with me. Can I come grab it?
This
you
is
put it
the,
up?
yeah, this is the custodial, Carolyn.
You want to share your screen?
Oh, okay, no problem. So, yeah, so the original request from DPW was to have 2 additional, so right now we contract out for 6 hours of building twice a week throughout the town for janitorial services. Building maintenance was requesting 2 full positions, with 1 position being part custodian and part maintenance, small repairs. So we felt that 2 additional positions was going to be too much for this year, but let's move into that. There was just a lack of clarity in those original discussions where it was we are going to add 1 new custodian. Yes, I was implying that we would be keeping our vendor, and that person would do all of the buildings except the library and the senior center, because that really needs daily input from all of the traffic that those areas get, plus the kitchen in the senior center. And that new custodian would focus on those 2 buildings and then do small repairs throughout the town. Along those calculations, some communication breakdown was we had lowered the services from the vendor, and that was not the intention. So we had taken out 30,000 from that vendor. So this is, once that was recognized, and we really need way more than 6 hours in each building a week, as you can imagine, bathrooms and public traffic for public safety, North Station, that does still have some activity there, as well as Town Hall and DPW. We needed to keep that same level of the vendor. So that extra 30 is fully funding our vendor. And it's a full-time custodian slash small repairs for the two larger buildings with a larger activity.
So this is taking some of the burden off of Gary, basically, as far as maintenance.
It is absolutely for the small maintenance repairs. Yes, absolutely. But it's just providing the appropriate custodial for all of these are public buildings and nowhere near enough do we have now.
Right.
Right, so when we cut the custodial out, it meant his new full-time person was mostly going to be doing custodial work. And he wasn't getting any of the additional regular maintenance work that he had requested, and we just had a misunderstanding. So this makes more sense. Obviously, it adds to the budget, but that now his new employee is going to be focused on the higher other level, and he's available though too for what the problem with the senior center and the library, but that they're very heavily trafficked. They're used 7 days a week into the evenings, and our custodial contract covers, I think, 2 cleanings a week, Carolyn, 2 or 3, whatever it is.
6 hours a week.
Okay, it's not necessarily right after your big meeting last night or a big event yesterday afternoon. So now you've got someone on staff who can go do those interim cleanups.
Yeah,
so
and
that,
the custodian is also helping, especially at the senior center. They have so much activity. They're moving tables, they're setting up for activities and events. And in a senior center, you tend to have more issues with bathroom cleanup and things like that. You really need to have somebody during the day on site. So that was the focus.
yes. And I'm sorry, this was not a matter of, oh, we changed our mind, Amy. I know I'm we're sorry. It really was a matter of we didn't understand, and we just didn't have we weren't together on this. But
We
and
are
the entire budget, that was the only thing that we were totally cross-wired on. So there's the good part. So we will we'll keep working on it.
Thanks.
Do we need to vote on that, or has that change already been made?
Changes in the budget as presented.
All right.
Do you want to start sharing your screen, Linda, with that?
Okay.
I'm just saying, I mean, sorry to jump in, but I was just saying, it's hard
No, you're
to
good.
visualize what you're saying sometimes.
Okay. I'm going.
No, go ahead. I was just going to ask if the finance committee had any more discussion on that issue, or if everyone was good with it.
I'm okay.
I'm good
Yes,
with it.
Like, and funding for that is just coming out of, is that coming out of the library or senior center budgets for that $30,000?
No, that's centralized, right, Linda? In DPW.
I'm sorry. I'm having trouble.
Custodial. Yeah. no, sorry,
It's in the account that it's called the 490 building maintenance, and it is at this point still a separate budget from highway. Was that the question?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Are you seeing the finance committee budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. I guess we're good there. Next item. Anything else that we need to?
So there's the 490 budget there where we had it. No. That's not the one that I wanted to share. Okay, I'm sorry. Keep going, David. I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask what the next topic was. Was there anything else that we need to address before doing the warrant? The only concern I had was I'd really like to see the lines painted on the streets, and I didn't know if that got resolved or if that was something we still needed to address. In the original budget, it wasn't there, so I don't know. I don't think we made any changes to that.
David, you wanted to add to that or keep it the same?
I don't think they were.
I think there was a grant last year or something along those lines that covered
Use-
a big portion of the cost. And so the concern was that the dollar amount that was in the actual budget this year, since there would probably be no grant, wouldn't cover the full cost of painting all the lines in the town.
So I'm just, I'm trying to remember how that conversation went. I know that when discussions with Scott, I was trying to have him look at rotating that from year to year instead of doing all of them the first year. So the numbers I think that are in my recommendations were based on trying to do that, not all of the roads all at once. I would need to pull Scott back in to see what the cost is. Is that what you're thinking of, is do all of the roads in 1 year?
I don't know. I'd have to talk to Scott. I mean, as a safety thing, I think it's important. I also think that, rather than going with the FERCog and sometimes the cheapest and lowest quality bidder on some of these things, a lot of the highways in the area, they can paint lines every other year and they last. But for whatever reason, the paint vendors that we use, it seems to scrape off and fade off, 6 months later. So I don't know if there's a better option than what we're doing. And maybe if we had some better quality paint or better quality lines, then we wouldn't have to be doing these every year. So maybe we could save money in the long run. I don't know.
Okay. I can certainly ask that question and get that response back to you. And if you want to bring him if you need another meeting to talk with him about that, we can do that.
Okay.
I don't have any other particular topics. Is this thing that you have up, is it something you can change, Linda? Is it something you can play with while we're?
I'm changing it on my version. But this is a PDF. I'm not quite as fluent at sending you the whole thing. Because
I
it's
know you could do it, Linda. You did it last year. You were so good. You were moving them up and down, saying, let's try this, let's try that.
You just have to share your, the Excel sheet that you're doing this in. That screen.
But it's the entire budget. It's on my town computer and I'm zooming on my laptop. So I have to email it to myself and then see, it worked great the year that I was working from home because it was all right there. So you want the finance committee worksheet? So
I guess, do we need it? I mean, are we changing anything else tonight or?
So far, because I can certainly send you the updated version. So far, you have reduced by 40,000. So this figure here, the 25,01072 is now 20,461,072, and you're using 40,000 less than free cash on this line here. 899, you've gone down to 859. 859. So if you reduce 40,000 out, I think you decided not to reduce the HR budget, but to leave the retirement funding in the HR budget and instead reduce the article, which is fine. And the other thing that was on the table is whether you wanted to do any reduction from reserve fund. And I'll tell you, you literally never when I was on finance committee, use any of the reserve fund before fall town meeting. It's really pretty much an end of the year reserves. So, I mean, there's really no harm there in making a cut unless it's just a pointless exercise and taking it out to put it back in. So since I had put it in as a suggestion, is that something that you want to discuss or you just want to leave that one alone?
I mean, we did bump up OPEB by 10,000 and we did reduce the free cash by 40,000. So, I mean, at least we're going in the right direction there. If we reduce, I mean,
You actually reduced it by 55. If you use the buyback article, another 15 came out.
Okay, all right.
So you're using 55 less in free cash now.
So I mean, if we reduce our reserve fund and we don't use it, that's just going back into free cash anyways at the end of the year.
Yeah, yep.
So it's kind of a,
Just leave it alone. Okay.
I'd almost rather just have it just in case rather than cut it and then have it go back to free
Mhm.
cash anyway.
I agree.
Is that in on the budget then?
That's it for me, unless anybody else has anything.
I don't have any other items.
I'm good.
Okay.
Let's keep moving.
All right,
the
I will
warrant?
I will send you a corrected one and do you want to go through the rest of the warrant articles?
Do we need to do we need to do any other vote to have it, or just? I guess just the only change that we had, or do we have to make a motion to present this, as this is the budget that we are presenting now? Right?
We have another meeting, so when she gives us the formal version with the changes, why don't we do that then?
Yeah, because we're with the select board tomorrow night, so we can certainly vote on that then.
Okay, and it'll be in.
I'll give you time to get that over tomorrow.
I have it in the Excel, but I don't have it in the PDF
Right.
yet. I'll get it out to you shortly, but yes, so you are using the 859,863 in free cash, and you're funding a budget for 20,461,072. With a reduction of OPEB for $40,000 to 180,000. So that is your final recommended budget, and that's easy. Oh, and then, enterprise funds too. That's the second budget that you need to make a recommendation on.
Okay.
I think with the, now, the revenues that we're using are still the revenues that had been in the budget book. And that was before the rate increases. And we haven't quite figured out how the rate increases are, the most recent commitments are just going out. And Susan and Kim need a little more time in getting that together. So just for starters, since there was enough free cash to cover it, we are using, and we may just go right to town meeting with this amount because there is enough reserves in each of them to cover the budgets that have been recommended. And just know that when you look at, let's see, let me go back up to okay, here's the funding article. Okay, so fees, for example, for sewer, 1,008,224. And so here's what's coming in fees. And then for each of them, sewer, water, Hadley Media, we have amount of reserves being used to fund these budgets. We do have those reserves, but with the increase in the rates, and which will bring an increase in the fees, by the time we really get to carrying it through, the reserves used in each of these categories will be less.
Except for Hadley Media, most likely, right?
Except for Hadley Media.
Which is something
An
we have to address.
ongoing.
We're gonna have to address at a different
Absolutely.
time.
I think, yes, they have it to spare right now. We can do it this year. We can make it through next year, but we need a better plan going forward. Absolutely, Paul.
It's not sustainable.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. Those fees are not going up ever. They're going down.
So if I could just get a motion to recommend, this is Article 2, right?
It's actually technically Article 9, but it's the second one on this. Yes, Article 9.
Okay, Article 9.
I'll make a motion to adopt Article 9 as presented. Does that take care of it?
Just need a second.
Move.
Second,
All right, I got Andy for a second. And then roll call, Amy,
yes,
Paul,
Yes.
Shardul,
Yes,
Andy,
Yes.
And yes.
Excuse me.
Okay. Do you want to go through the rest of the warrant articles then?
Yeah, let's go through them real quick, and that way we don't have to take the time tomorrow night to make our recommendations on them unless something changes.
Okay. There are
Okay.
a few. If I just click over to the next tab, no, not that one. Yes, that one. Now, do you see my calculation sheet?
Mhm.
Okay, good. So if I just go from tab to tab, that works. Okay, good. All right, so this is our free cash category. Down here, this column. So we are using columns, first column, here it says 899, 863 for free cash. We know now that that is going to be $40,000 less. Ambulance services is the next one, and then there will be later on the capital stabilization and the employee buyback fund, which you have decided already to reduce to $10,000. So I guess the ambulance one, let me go over to, that is Article 10. Ambulance services, that's the using 403,007 from free cash to set up the ambulance receipts reserved. It can be slightly less than that now because they are part of the group. They are going to be using the town's copier services, but I think it was only down either $700 or $1,000. So I'll bring it down $700 or $1,000 from this 403. But basically, it's over 400,000. And this budget was in your original budget book as a budget that was going to be funded by article rather than in the budget, because in the future, this article will be funded out of special revenues. And however, this is going to be, it needs a jump start. We need to, or prime the pump or whatever. We've had various expressions for, we've got to get it going first. And at such time as it's going, not only will it fund itself, but we will be able to get this money paid back from future at such time as there are sufficient funds to pay it. So this is a loan to ourselves to get this going, and when the monies start coming in. Now, remember that this is when we set up a special revenue fund and this becomes profitable, or we're making money. This is not something where we can take the ambulance receipts and use it to fund the budget. They have to stay within ambulance, which is why we would be keeping track of something like this $403,000, because then we have a legitimate ambulance expense to charge those special revenue funds. So think of it as something like an enterprise fund where it is going to take care of itself, but not yet. So this Article 10 is the but not yet part, and hopefully for 25, at least much more of it will be funded out of the special revenues.
Can I just explain, go into a little bit more depth with that? So I just want to remind everybody, this is for the basic level. So it's going to be the second ambulance that gets put on call. We're still going to keep our vendor doing the primary calls. So when we look at the reimbursement costs, we're not gonna, this first year, we're not gonna bring in $403,000. This is really, we'll be adjusting this year to year until that point where it would be self-sufficient. So I just want to make sure people realize that Mike was getting concerned that people think it's going to be the primary ambulance, and it's not going to be. So it's going to take us a few years to get where it's completely self-sustaining, but in other communities, it eventually you see it where it's actually being able to fund more vehicles, another ambulance. So, but this is our baby step towards that. Andy?
Yes, Linda, you said that we're going to be keeping track of the $402,000. If in these next coming years, we are also having to inject more money into that, I'm assuming we will continue to keep track of that as all of our expenses. And then eventually when the needle turns and we start getting back in, we will capture all of that.
This is true. So this is an advantage of this being an article, that the article is covering a full year's budget. there's just no way we're not getting any money. So we're not going to, but we have to initially fund it from free cash, but we know that there's going to be money coming in. We may not have to spend this entire $403,000 the first year or whatever. And there's certain timeframes in which we can go and claim the money back, but we won't probably in the first year be spending $403,000 all out of free cash because it will be getting its own revenue in which case the money will stay there and help to fund the second year. So, so your question was whether we have to keep injecting cash. Hopefully this will take care of it, but none of us can say 100%.
Can you clarify one thing? So you're saying, sorry, I've got clocks are gonna go off. I think that's the last one. All right. This 403, we will later be able to draw back as a repayment of the expense that we put in this year by vote of special town meeting.
Yes. Yes, I've said.
So let's say in 4 years, they have more than $400,000. They have a nice, fund for future expenses, another ambulance, whatever, ongoing replacement parts and so on and so forth. Plus, they've got $400,000 extra that you feel safe to draw back out. We will put forward and get that back to free cash or the general budget, something.
We won't hurt the program, but we
Right.
will
No, of course not, but
we'll be running a tab.
yeah, we're running a tab. This is a loan. There'll be a. Okay.
I like that, Joe.
Carolyn doesn't look as sure. Carolyn, what do you?
I'm a little cautious with that because you will have to each year. My understanding is actually vote an allocation back into the account from the select board can set up the special revolving account, but you can't just spend it when the money comes in. You actually have to the town has to vote to take that money to reimburse. So I
mean, the Warren article does say that by such expended amounts will be refunded from the fund by a vote of a future town meeting.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that I'm just saying, let's say in 4 years, we haven't taken any money, we haven't had to put any more money back into it because of revenues, and they've started to build up a kitty. The needle has moved the direction we wanted to, and they have not only enough money for anticipated expenses for the following year, but they actually think they've got a surplus of 400,000 or some portion of it. We can then go to town meeting and say, having looked at that, they feel comfortable repaying whatever portion of the loan back to the town or the tab.
I would be more
Not saying that's going to happen, but
getting
that's,
that information. I'm curious to know. So I would like to get some clarification on that. And unless Linda, you have more information on that.
No, I'm comfortable with that. This isn't going to happen quickly anyways.
no,
So,
I mean, maybe 10 years. I'm just saying.
I'm comfortable
What
with what
we're
Carolyn's saying.
telling the voters at this meeting is that 400,000 is an investment. Hopefully, we don't have to put more in because there'll be revenues against it. They may not even need the 403. Yes, you're saying that also,
Yes, we're saying that.
correct? Might be that at the end of the year, they only need $300,000 of the budget that was expended because a lot of people needed ambulance rides on the second level ambulance.
Right. And it is tricky because Carolyn's right. We don't get, they don't take the money in and start spending it in the program. The money starts to accumulate. Then we go to a meeting and we pay it down.
Right.
There's a little bit of a money
I
comes in.
understand that.
It's tricky.
I
think-
understand that, but we're going to the town meeting with a
Right. The intention that it come back.
that it come back. It is possible to get the money back if the money goes the right direction.
I would say yes to that.
Correct.
Okay, that's
But
what we're
as far
telling
as
people.
how far out you go with it, because then you have to start going into an ambulance depreciation fund to fund a future ambulance, so that it gets a little bit more, there gets a little bit more involved as we get more robust. So, but I would like to get more of that information clarified for you.
Yeah, I'm just saying if they came back and said, listen, you'll get this back in 10 years. Okay, don't expect it any sooner. Okay, I just feel like we ought to tell the voters, this is what we're anticipating here. Okay,
Okay, I'll get.
the way
I'll
this is
definitely-
written, it sounds like, oh, we're gonna get this money back. And how soon is that? In my lifetime or somebody else's?
So for town meeting, you want to know when?
Yeah, just
What's the plan?
be honest with people about this. I want people to know when we do new buildings, what it's gonna cost every year to maintain them.
Mhm.
I'd like people to know if we put a 10-year roof on a building or a 40-year roof
Sure.
on a new building. I don't think the voters should be misinformed when they vote for special funding like this
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just tell them the whole thing and then let them make a decision.
Sounds
There must be revenue projections on this or we wouldn't be going ahead with it, right? That this is not going to be a drain all the time. So there must be a model that this was planned on that we should,
There is.
Yeah.
you
I
know,
think
go
there's a
get
pro-
neutral and go positive.
Right.
No, I think this will be helpful to have for town meeting.
Yeah.
This is why your eyes are really important. So
Right.
we're
I think
in
that's-
it so much that I think it's hard not to, see the voters'
Sure.
perspective.
Show them a pro forma.
Mhm.
Okay. All right,
I
thank
just
you.
need a motion to recommend that.
I'll make that motion. Recommending the special appropriate approximately $400,000 because it's going to change. Article 10. All right, put it that way.
All right,
So
Article
moved.
10, I got a motion.
Yeah.
All right, second by Shardul. And I'll do a roll call. Amy,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Shardul,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Okay, what's next?
Actually, we probably should go back to numbers, number 7 is the prior year bills. Do we need finance committee on that, Carolyn? Yeah, it looks like we do. I'm sorry, I skipped that one. But there's your, these are the prior year invoices. Starting off with the mosquito control that we talked about earlier this evening. A couple of other invoices that just, I don't know, arrived late. And there seems to be a, I mean, this is a standard article these
Mhm.
days, especially since we're closing the fiscal year out
Right.
earlier than we have in years past, which means there are going to be invoices that just don't make it into the mainstream. And they get left behind. Not all vendors get their things in on time. So,
All right, quick question. The 2 free cash items we are already in our free cash calculation, correct?
yes,
Okay.
Correct.
So I'll make a motion to approve the Article 7 prior year invoices.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion by Paul, second by Amy, and any other discussion on that? Do a roll call. Amy,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Shardul,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well.
okay. I think the totals I provided in that sheet, I'll have to, good thing is I labeled it draft. That's not quite right. So I will have to fix that sheet for you. I can see now I goofed something up. Okay, so the next one is,
Article
I
11.
don't know whether we need you on revolving accounts, but
Has a place for us at the end of it.
there is a place for you at the end. Weights and Measures is going to close out. North Hadley Hall Rentals, we're not going to be renting that anymore. And interestingly, we came up with a pretty large amount, $37,423 in the planning board revolving account, where it seems, this one goes back years, and Amy, it was your idea to look more closely at revolving accounts this year. So we just picked up almost $40,000 between these 3 accounts. But the interesting thing with the planning board one is that it has had that balance for several years. And what they used to do, and they don't do this anymore, is they would collect engineering fees and pay for the peer review fees. So they would pay an engineer to review the plans. Developers.
And the Park and Rec, is that
Yeah, is that
50,000
50,000
or is that a?
So like, those
Those
are
aren't closing.
limits. Those aren't a budget. I'm sorry, Linda, I jumped
Yeah.
in. Yeah, those are limits that they're allowed to spend. So that's the money they take in for specific project, classes and programs. And it's what they pay out to pay for the instructors and supplies. So that's
I
how much.
understand that.
Yeah, it's
The
just
Park
looks
and
like a
Rec
typo.
number has a funny typo.
That's a typo.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Oh, where?
Oh, is it missing a 0?
Oh,
well, I'm not sure what it's missing. I don't think they have $50,000 spending, so I'm assuming this is 50.
Oh, they do because they run their programs out.
Oh,
of it.
okay.
It's pretty high, yeah.
So it's 50,000, there's a
Yeah,
zero.
it probably is. Oops, thank you. Okay, we'll fix that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you short, Carol.
No, that's okay.
No, no,
So
no.
that,
Was a
I brought it
typo,
in.
not an explanation.
yeah.
He was
So
on a
that
roll.
is, that is staying. Anything that's not crossed out is staying. These are usual, there are continuations, there are no changes in the spending limits on those, on these. So the only thing that's changing are pulling in the weights and measures balance and the North Hadley rentals balance. Between those two, they're about $2,000. And then we have this large one from planning board where it seems monies were collected, but they were spent out of a different account than what they were put into. They were paid out of the planning board fund, but they were putting into this revolving account. So it's been sitting there for many years and there doesn't seem to be any disagreement about pulling that money back in, which is great because it goes to free cash.
Where is the planning board on here?
It's not on there. That was,
got
it will get on there for tomorrow night.
And how much is it?
You helped us find it, Amy.
Yeah, it's 37,000.
Good, okay.
Okay,
Yes. So.
Motion?
We'll go through that motion. Yes.
So I'll make a motion to approve Article 11 revolving accounts with the addition of the planning board's revolving account of estimated 37,000 or something on that order.
Second,
All right, motion by Paul, second by Shardul. Any other discussion on that? Roll call, Amy,
yes,
Paul,
Yes,
Shardul,
yes,
Andy. Was that a yes? I missed you. Yep, okay. And I'm a yes as well.
All right, I have to go back to the start on these. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, because I actually was just highlighting the ones using free cash, and I realize if you want to be going through the entire warrant, that I shouldn't miss any. So number 5 is the water plant filtration. This is an amount that's put in each year and building up the stabilization fund.
can
Specifically,
we just go back to like, did you miss 2? Should we go back to the beginning?
and
you don't need to, oh my gosh, you're right. Okay.
Do you want to do the consent agendas together, David? Or are you do you want to go individually?
I mean, I'm okay with doing consent altogether unless somebody has some concerns about something in the consent agenda.
Okay, we'll just
do you need
blast.
do you want a motion to do the consents together? Do you need that?
Yeah, just to recommend all the consent agenda.
Okay, so I'll make a recommendation that we approve Article 2, the consent agenda is Article 2, Article 3, Article 4, Article 5, Article 6.
5 and 6.
Right?
Sounds,
That's all, right?
second,
Okay, so motion by Paul, second by Shardul. Any discussion on the consent agenda items? Okay, roll call, Amy,
Yes,
Paul,
Yes,
Shardul,
yes,
Andy? All right, and I'm a yes as well.
okay, so other than the CPA, for some reason I want to come back to it because I want to make sure we do Article 20, which is the last one on on free cash. This is David and Amy have been part of, this is starting to contribute to the capital stabilization fund. Once again, this $50,000, the important thing was to have this on here so that we get in the habit of making an effort to contribute to this annually. Then I just grabbed $50,000 out of the air. So this is completely up to you, whether this is an annual town meeting or a special town meeting article, and whether it's going on at this time, and whether 50,000 is the number that you want to use.
what was it last year?
0.
never been done, right?
It's not that it has never been done. It has been done, but it stopped being done a few years ago. It used to be done with the entire amount of meals excise tax that the town was receiving, and then they would put the money into free cash. they would take the money from free cash, put it into the capital stabilization fund, and then turn around and spend it all. Pretty much at the same meeting on capital. And then after a while, it was like, well, we really need the money for the budget.
Yeah.
And that just stopped probably 5-7 years ago. It's the last time.
So the fund has zero balance?
No, it's got 3,000, maybe 4.
So, zero.
Essentially zero.
Yeah.
And I mean, we only bought like, $1 million worth of capital last meeting, so we're almost there.
12 sheets of plywood, I think, 3,000.
Yeah. So Amy, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but so what we had kind of been talking about and just, some options for the future, similar to the way meals tax was used. Personally, I'd like to see cannabis funds, tax revenue used to fund this on, going forward. Obviously, those cannabis funds are part of the budget now, the general budget. So we need to figure out, something else to take the place of that money. So yeah, initially we had been talking about much higher dollar amounts, like 200, 300 or more thousand into this capital stabilization fund. Obviously that's not going to happen. Otherwise we'd wipe out our free cash completely just on something like that. So that's kind of the background. So, it's better than nothing, but it's far from what it needs to be, unfortunately. So.
And what are the uses for the, it sounds like it's for large projects or large capital projects, but.
Yeah, it'd be for things like, every so often we need to buy a new, fire engine. We need to buy, I don't know, some other, like the vac truck that we just bought, things along those lines. So that we don't necessarily, or even, replace a cruiser early, something along those lines. So we don't have to go to town. Well, I guess we still have to go to town meeting for a vote on it, but it sets the money aside.
But it was also, David, to avoid some of the borrowing, short-term
Right.
borrowing on smaller items. So let's say you had a $20,000 article on town hall computers, furnishings, various others, some things for the school, sometimes $15,000. The smaller items, they just pay it out of cash and not put it on for borrowing.
And currently we just put all of those expenses up in the budget.
We borrow everything. We've been borrowing and borrowing and borrowing, and all we do is keep increasing the amount of principal and interest that we are doing so we can borrow more, but we're borrowing and borrowing. And so we really, I think we need to stop and start focus on putting some away. I know that we have some big expenses coming up too, such as the ladder truck we've talked about. I mean, that's like probably $1 million right there if you have to replace the ladder truck. And then you have the schools right there. They're going to take a lot out of some of their other funds, but you got at least a couple million coming from the schools pretty soon. So I'm estimating, I mean, we're looking at least, I'm thinking $3 million coming up with the next 5 years. So we need to we should be putting away a lot more, but this is all we can come up with right now. But we need to look at other ways to start funding some of our capital. And we have the big project that's going to be coming up, which is the DPW. That's another big one, which you'll probably do a debt exclusion for, but still, how about, you're doing the debt exclusion for that. You're going to need something to fund all these other projects that are happening at the same time. It's just, we need to start on this path somehow and start getting some money in there. I mean, it was built up for a little while and it's just nothing now.
So Shardul, in a perfect world, in a community where there's lots of money and the tax rate is really high and free cash is typically not used to operate the budget. So
Right.
bigger communities will use free cash to do the capital projects, plus put a lot into stabilization. So typically you'll see large, like a DPW building, partly borrowed, some from capital, some from free cash. So, so that Hadley's not there, but I can tell you in 3 years, you have come a long way. I know you're nervous about OPEB, but you are so far along that a lot of other communities, you guys do need to pat yourselves on the back as far as OPEB's concerned. But You are better than probably 4 years ago as far as your free cash. So I just want to give you guys some credit. You guys
Yeah,
have done
yeah,
well.
thank you.
Thank you. Well, I mean, how do we designate, for instance, the cannabis funds towards something like this?
So I'm going to give you some bad news about the cannabis. There's legislation right now that is being fought by communities. I just did a letter today to the Cannabis Commission. They're trying to take that away from the towns. So we don't get a lot, but we do use it as part of, that's how we count our revenues and budget and balance the budget. So there's a lot of pushback. We're hoping that's not going to happen. But we may have to be careful about setting aside money for something specific. There's threats that it'll be retro, that we will have to pay back what we've gotten. But I don't see that happening because I actually don't think municipalities can pay retro. So there's a lot of stuff going on at the state level over that.
Well, let's hope they take the high road, as it were.
Yeah.
Right.
So, so going back to how to fund this thing, is it commonplace to set aside a certain percentage of, let's say, meals and occupancy tax or cannabis tax for this fund?
Well, you almost do it in a roundabout way because what your revenue and what's left over at the end of the year goes into free cash. So you actually are using that. And just by allocating free cash to go into stabilization, I mean, this is my own personal observation and opinion. Linda, you might have a different perspective, but you almost are, that money is getting designated inevitably towards free cash. So just using free cash to fund a stabilization, a capital stabilization is such a great idea, even if you're starting off small.
Yep, and it keeps it from getting absorbed into the budget. I mean, if we're trying to make other plans on the budget to be paid out of revenue.
Okay.
So, but in defense of borrowing, when we were borrowing at 0.7%, it was really, really a good idea. So there has been a change, though. The interest rates have been going up, and it's not quite the deal that it was 3 or 4 years ago. So we've had some really small borrowing rates. But yes, it is time to perhaps do something different. So.
But you could do that by setting a policy that 3% of free cash goes into capitalization every year. You could do that, and that could be your goal. You may have that. I have not seen it written anywhere, but it could be written somewhere.
So just so have it be really attached to the free cash. Instead of saying like some tax collection, like, you know, in terms of whether it's cannabis or whatever, just say 3% of free cash goes into this fund every year.
And I think the challenge there too is we're trying to get off of free cash. So at the same time, kind of, we want to make sure that we're not risking that, I guess, as well.
Well, I mean, look, if you go back the last few years, if we weren't balancing this budget using free cash, we'd probably have, I would bet $2.5 million just in the last 5 to 6 years sitting in the capital stabilization fund, maybe more.
Right. Which
so that if we were dealing with a building project and we could pull $2.5 or $3 million out of there, we might have a significant impact against future borrowing and dealing with some of the things that we're going to need to deal with on a capital basis. So I think that's a discussion that needs to be brought to town meeting for people to be thinking about, that we have been holding back our revenue stream has been subsidized by free cash at the expense of future projects that we have to do. That we are going to be, we're going to need to do. Okay, there's no way around that. The DPW situation has to be dealt with. Down the road, we will have school issues that are into the millions of dollars. And we need to plan for that now, rather than, shock the system. So I think that's a bigger discussion that we need to, but we should I think we should have a statement about that for us at town meeting to start preparing people to think about it.
Yeah. All right, do you have a motion as well?
Okay. I mean, I'll make a motion to support Article 20 if we need that. It's not on there, but I will make a motion to support Article 20. To move 50,000 for free cash to the capital station.
You're right, you should be on there.
Yeah.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Certainly.
See, this is why they're drafts, and this is why you're helping.
Second,
Second by Shardul. And we will have, obviously we have tomorrow night and possibly one more meeting if we're going to meet with Scott to talk about the lines and whatnot. So, we can come up with a statement from the finance committee at that meeting as far as
Okay.
funding this.
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea.
I mean, we've spoken in the past about wanting to return the funds back to free cash and stabilization funds when we did that little borrowing a few years ago during what was a international emergency. But at the same time, we're hooked on this here. And I think we need to have a plan to, not steal those funds to fund things that we ought to be funding. And start building up for future big expenses, so we don't shock the people with, a major override that has to happen down the road that we might be able to, reduce.
quick
Okay.
question.
We got a-
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to roll call the vote on that, but go ahead with your question, Shardul.
No, let's just finish the vote and then I can ask.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, Amy? Oh, she's muted.
Yes, yes,
Okay, Paul,
Yes,
Shardul,
Yes,
Andy,
yes.
and yes for me as well.
one of the questions now that I'm learning more about this free cash thing is the two ways that I see that free cash can be generated is either we spend less or we generate more income.
There you go.
So
Perfect.
so do we analyze like that 1.3 million or whatever that number was from 22? Do we know how much was generated from less spending and how much was generated from increased revenues?
We did. I can't tell it to you now, but I know a lot of it was the increase in the rooms and the meals. So $800,000 more in excise taxes than we had anticipated. There's a lot of it, and that's over half of it. And then we had other areas and revenues, and I can't remember now how much was from the others. But so if your question is when it gets certified this year or anytime, do we know where it comes from? Yeah. And some of it we know in advance and some of it we figure out after we get the figure and we work with the accountant and find out.
So what was the majority of it? Like, so you don't have it off the top. I'm just wondering how much.
No, I don't have it off the top of my head.
Yeah, just curious for me to understand exactly how much the real budget is really going up. The real spending is going up from previous years, and how much of that savings from previous years is really deferred spending that we're going to do in the future.
Well, certainly the request to hold back on spending towards the end of the year is something that does come up is evaluated about this time of year each year. Carolyn will take a look at it and say our spending's up a little bit, or we're concerned, and please hold back on your spending. Don't spend out all your budget just because you can.
And during COVID, I know all the department heads were great as far as cutting what they could. So we saw kind of a spike, of free cash during COVID. So, we asked people to, put off expenses and to save on expenses as much as possible until we knew what was happening with revenues. So I think over the next couple of years, we'll have a better idea of how accurate the budget is versus savings, just from kind of, holding on to the cash a little tighter.
Shardul, the other thing is the majority of this budget is personnel. So that's just something that, especially with the unions, that's contractual, and then our department heads are contractual. And then we do have to keep in mind that 2 unions are forming. So it's going to be very helpful for us as far as a little bit of a prediction with this compensation study to know how that's going to balance itself out. But, you know, I think we have to keep that in mind, that some of these costs we can't control. We do our best.
Oh,
in
oh,
those-
without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. Yeah, and again, we have to really understand, you know, what are kind of our baseline costs that are kind of fixed in certain ways, because of, as you mentioned, contracts and other things. And but we can't be operating at deficits, continual deficits, you know, going forward, if they're real deficits, I should say, or if it's especially with projection incomes, and if things start to stabilize and people start tightening their purse strings and so on and so forth.
What's the next article that we need to?
Let's see, I think you are done with. You're done with all but the CPA articles. So-
I do think we should recommend or not those. I mean,
Okay.
I think we started last year, maybe, I think it was, and I think it's a good idea just to have people at town meeting know where we stand on it.
How about Article 22? I don't think I saw that one.
Oh,
Dan's on here if you want to talk about that. Dan's on. Is that the assessor's article?
Yes.
Okay, Dan's here.
A few years ago, the assessors looked at the clause 41A, which is the tax deferral for seniors. And we thought it was improper to be charging 8% interest on that account when interest rates were below 2%. So we put an article on the town meeting warrant. I think it was for fiscal 21. And it was reduced from 8% to 4%. Now interest rates are back up 6-7% for home mortgages, and the town's cost is going up. So what the assessors are looking to do here is revert back to the 8% normal interest rate that would be charged on the tax deferral. And this is only an amount that would be paid. It's 8% simple interest, not compound interest. And it's paid either when they take the property out of the deferral or the property gets sold.
Sounds reasonable based on interest rates.
Yes, it does. I'll make a motion unless there's more questions.
I just have one question, Dan. Would it make more sense to benchmark just that interest rate and just add like whatever, whether it's the Fed rate, the home lending rate, or something like that, instead of having you and giving you the flexibility to go and change that rate based on the market itself?
It would, and it would make sense for the state to do that on the state level. The problem is that the state sets the rate at 8%, and we can only go down from that point. So even
Okay.
if we were paying 12% interest rates, we couldn't go higher than 8.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
All right, unless there's anybody else, I'm sorry. Jump again.
Go ahead.
All right, I'll make a motion to support or approve Article 22, assessors tax deferral interest rate change.
Second.
Okay, motion by Paul, second by Shardul. Roll call, Amy,
Yes,
Paul,
Yes,
Shardul,
Yes.
Andy. You keep cutting
Yes,
out on my
yes,
audio.
yes.
Okay, sorry. Yep, just wanted to make sure. And I'm a yes as well. And then what do we have? Just CPA left?
CPA is it. You want to
Okay.
go backwards or you want to start the,
Start at
Russell
the top.
School's probably the big one. Why don't we go take care of the smaller ones?
Yeah.
Let's see if you need,
I'm sorry, did we do 14, the cleanup balances? Oh, no, that's in CPA also.
we don't have general fund cleanup. We don't, this time, we'll do that in the fall. So I guess we go back to Article 12, which is there. I think we're going to have it on the consent agenda, but I don't think we covered it tonight. I'm not sure we made a final answer because they did increase the amount by $10,000 to be spent on their administrative expenses, which would include part of a salary of a person to take care of their business out of town hall. That's going to be actually part of, that's going to be a shared position with conservation and planning and Board of Health. Is that right? I think, not Board of Health.
Board of Health, Conservation, ZBA, and Planning.
ZBA, yeah, ZBA planning. Okay, so anyways, it's a standard article, and their administrative is raised to $10,000. That's it.
Any discussion? Otherwise, I'll make a motion.
Mhm.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we support Article 12, Community Preservation Act Committee Consent Agenda.
Second,
All right, motion by Paul, second by, was that Shardul?
sure.
Okay, sure. Roll call. Amy,
Yes,
Paul,
Yes.
Shardul,
Yes,
Andy,
Yes,
and yes for me as well. All right.
CPA extensions, I don't know that we need recommendations, although I see that it's here. This is just continuing extending the deadline. They put in their articles now that the money comes back after 2 years if it isn't spent. So they're extending these another year. Do you want to vote on that?
Sure.
Take it away.
Me again? Yeah, sure.
Yep,
I'll make
that's
a
you,
motion.
Paul.
I'll make a motion to support Article 13, CPA extensions.
second,
All right, motion by Paul, second by Shardul. Roll call. Amy,
yes,
Paul,
Yes.
Shardul,
yes,
Andy,
yes.
and yes for me too.
Okay.
Fire balance is coming back in. Nothing to argue with there.
So you need a motion for, I'll make a motion in support of Article 14, clean up prior CPA balances.
second,
Motion by Paul, second by Shardul. Roll call. Amy,
yes,
Paul,
Yes.
Shardul,
yes,
Andy,
Yes,
and I'm a yes as well.
So Carolyn, I'm not really able to explain their other projects. Is that something you want to do or have them
Sure.
wait?
They're pretty self-explanatory. The historic samplers, it's preservation of 10 historic needlepoint samplers. That's for 18,000. Did you want any more explanation?
Mhm.
Okay. Vote away.
All right, I'll make a motion in support of Article 15, historic samplers. CPA.
second,
Motion by Paul, second by Shardul. Roll call. Amy,
yes,
Paul,
Yes.
Shardul,
yes,
Andy,
yes,
and yes for me too.
And then the next one is a Lake Warner study. So there's a group called the Friends of Lake Warner that I'm sure you're familiar with, but this is a request to study, do a long-range management plan for the lake. So that's their request of 20,700.
I'll make a motion in support of Article 16, Lake Warner study, CPA.
second,
I have questions.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
Maybe Andy can help out. What is your thoughts on this, Andy, from what you heard? Did you have anything to add, maybe?
yeah, I mean, I wasn't certain, certainly one question I had was whether or not this is gonna be like us funding an environmental cleanup, but this is more of a study to really assess the lake, what management plan can be used to stop the eutrophication. I don't word I learned, but yeah, of the sediments in the lake, basically trying to figure out what what the best plan is to attempt to mediate that and identify corrective actions.
Okay. And can you tell me about the negativity on that? I do see someone on the CPA didn't think that was a good use of their funds. So you can tell me
Well,
why?
again, I think there was, I really can't speak to the person that voted against it. Don't recall exactly the reason why. And I know the abstention was somebody who lived in the area and, was involved in agriculture up there. So, there's certainly one of the other issues there is cyanobacteria, which is becoming a growing problem in the lake, which can cause, health problems for people's or animals that are exposed to it. So just an ongoing trend with the water and again, with the sediments in there. So it seemed like a reasonable plan to get there, figure out what the best plan is to actually go about and take corrective action. They're hiring professionals to really do that, which is better than going out and grabbing estimates here and there. They're actually going to have somebody come up with experts to make the plan on how to deal with this.
Great. I'd love to see that cleaned up. Sounds like.
Yeah, we know in August that lily pads get pretty thick. You can almost walk on water. So
Yeah. Great. Thanks. I knew you had more information for us.
We need a vote.
We
We
need
have
to-
a motion and a
first and
second.
seconded. Yeah, motion and second.
Okay. All right. Roll call. Amy,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes,
Shardul,
Yes,
Andy,
Yes.
and yes for me too.
All right, Article 17 is historic signs and walking and audio driving tours. This is, they've tried for a couple of years to get, the Historical Commission has tried a couple times to get funding for this. And I think they had a different way of presenting it this year. So this is just gonna, it's just as explained. It helps with the signage for a walking tour. It's an audio driving tour. So that's what the 15,000 is for.
is this going to be just for Hadley, or is it part of like a greater Hampshire County area?
This is
Go
for
ahead, Andy.
Hadley. I was going to say, I'm sorry, this is for Hadley itself. But it certainly will be a feature of a historical tour that visitors from all over can come participate in, particularly with the audio broadcasting. So, people can go look at the landmarks, locations in town and have descriptions and the like be provided to them. There's also going to be some signage as well, pointing this audio tour out.
But is it part of like a greater program for historic places? So could somebody go, is it like a special website that highlights Northampton, Amherst, Hatfield, or is it just specific? Like, how would somebody find out about this?
It is, there's going to be signage promoting the program, and I'm sorry to the people, the historical folks that presented this, because I'm right now having a little bit of a recall problem on exactly how they were. It's not part of a greater valley-wide area. Again, there'll be signage to how to tune in and participate in that. And it's also, I think it's going to be on display in a few of the town buildings as well, or at least pointed to.
And brochures, I think. So
Yeah.
pamphlets or something that, and usually those are things that are picked up
Yeah, there's
in,
a print.
in our
There is a
public
print.
buildings, library, school.
Thank you.
Okay, motion.
I'll make a motion to recommend Article 17, historic signs, walking, and audio driving towards CPA.
Second,
Motion by Paul, second by Shardul. Roll call. Amy,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes,
Shardul,
yes,
Andy,
Yes.
and yes for me as well.
Okay, so I'm gonna do Article 18 and 19 together, even though Article 18 is a select board option. What came first was the CPA approved to set aside fund to stabilize the Russell School based on the Russell Schools Committee's survey and how they interpreted the data and what the recommendation would be. I had select board members and many other people in the community requesting what's going to happen next once we stabilize that. So what I did is I met at a conference, a consultant who specifically works on renovating historic buildings. Now, they do typically come in after the town sells it, and then they work with a private buyer to make sure it's restored appropriately and gives them a feasibility study to tell them what to do. But they also will work with towns. And so I asked them to come out just to give us guidance. And I set up a meeting with representatives from the Russell School, representatives from the town, Tommy, the building inspector, Gary, building maintenance, Chief Spanknable, and there was two members from the Russell School Committee. And the consultants walked through, thought it was a beautiful building, and agreed to give us a scope of work, what they could do to help us do three things. What are the options, whether it's a private option to sell it, whether it would be a private public partnership, we own it, we lease it out to the state or another private entity, you parts of the building, or if it's demolishing. So that was what I had worked with the Russell School, encouraging them to do, as well as CPA. But the Russell School did go to CPA and ask for the stabilization to be done simultaneously with the feasibility study. And the concern was from the select board members, as I gathered information, is they really wanted more. They were more focused on a feasibility study before there was an investment in the stabilization fund. I'm sorry, to stabilize it, because part of those options may include stabilization. So the concern was, why are we going to stabilize it if in fact we get an option that it would be better to choose one of those other options that would include the stabilization as part of the renovation. So this is my response and my recommendation, going back to the select board, working with Linda, how we think the community would support this project, because there absolutely is interested in Russell School, but they want to know where's the best place to put their money. And it was agreed that feasibility study really would need to be done first. So this article was really saying, the select board was saying either 30,000 from free cash, or if CPA were to reconsider, doing the feasibilities first before the stabilization funds were secured or pursued. So that's what this was. Since this has come up, we've had conversations from a member of the CPA and members of the Russell School Committee. And I think that this is going to move towards Russell School Committee is going to meet, CPA is going to meet. And I do believe that this will be one article for the Russell School. And I think it will be focused on just the feasibility study. I just can't say that because those two boards have not met. And that is why you see two articles. But I do think that there will be one article that will be agreeable to all of the entities that are asking questions and wanting to go further with this. Does that help?
So that one article will be basically Article 18.
Well, ideally, in my opinion, Linda, I'm not sure if you have a different perspective, it would be Article 19 that would get revised, and it would be the 30,000 for fees up to 30,000. I think it'll be closer to 25, but we know that it's better to make sure we've got it all covered, because we do have to follow procurement. I'll have to go out to bid for that feasibility study. But that is, I am anticipating that there'll be revision in the CPA request to just a feasibility study. Again, they have not met. This is where I suspect it will go. So that would just be Article 19. It would be a feasibility study.
I mean, 18 is feasibility, 19 is the.
Right.
But it would be the Russell School article for CPA. From CPA, that addresses
Right,
Russell,
not the other ones from free
not
cash,
from free cash.
right, because I won't support that. But I'm
Same-
okay
same
with a
here.
feasibility study from CPA.
And Carolyn, so the consultants and the people doing this feasibility study, because obviously there's a lot of emotion in here and there's people that have emotional attachments to the building or not. And I just want to make sure that this consultant's going to be independent and not just listening to one-sided stories from one committee or another,
So,
and that they're going to be, basing this on facts.
so as the chief procurement officer, I have to follow it by law, public procurement. So that is why I will be the contact person with Gary Berg. I think we really need to move towards employees overseeing projects that I'm actually, I'm the one who is inevitably owns this project is on behalf of the select board as the chief procurement officer. So it will be following public procurement.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
a town employee has to be the person and I've spoken with CPA even on past projects, as we move forward, any project that is done or brought forth by a volunteer on behalf of the select board, that has to fall under this office, the town administrator and the select board.
okay. Yeah, that's important to get a accurate feasibility study. So, is there, I was just gonna ask, is there a way, because Paul, I'm with you, I would not support out of free cash. And frankly, I would not support the CPA funds being used to stabilize a building that might be used for some other purpose in the future. So what's the best way to vote on this, I guess?
Why don't we not vote right now? Why don't we wait for that? When are they gonna come back with, because they're gonna try and get on this warrant, so at what point will the final version of this, the elimination of 18 and the rewrite of 19, if you're correct in your prediction here?
Well, the chair's away. Linda, you have a return date, but it would be sometime after,
Not till next week.
not till
Okay.
next week.
So we could find out when it happens and then hold a very short meeting to vote on it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would prefer to do that, defer vote until they come back with a final. I don't want to endorse this way.
But
We
the
have
only
a-
issue is it won't show on the warrant, correct? Because you already have to print it.
I don't, we have time.
Okay.
We're not printing it like this.
Right. Okay, so if
So
we can do that, so do you want a motion to defer, that we're gonna hold voting? I'll recommend
Well,
that we do not, or do we wait till they just come back? We just don't do anything, take no action.
What I would say is it seems like the consensus is that we'd say no to the free cash. So why don't we vote
Vote that
against
down.
recommending
Right.
that?
Okay,
The article is
And-
written or CPA funds if approved. Now, we couldn't draft something that uses CPA funds because we only have, we just can't be that presumptuous because the CPA has to vote it. But it is we really certainly want that to come out of CPA and not out of free cash. Sure, I mean, you can support Article 18 if it were to come from CPA funds, but you might be jumping the gun on that too.
yeah,
So
That would be a voting on a recommendation to the CPA on how to write their article,
I don't know,
how to
Andy.
fund their article.
I think Paul's right. I think
Yeah.
Paul's right. I think you guys should wait.
yeah, I think so. And Carolyn, you can certainly inform them of what we discussed here.
Yes.
So that they know that if they come back with an article that's, approximately $30,000 from CPA funds to do a feasibility study, following all the rules and regs, that we would support that.
but not the free
Well,
cash.
and we'll just hold a quick meeting, duly noted and all that, advertised, et cetera. Gesundheit.
All right, so we'll pass over those two then.
Yes,
All right, so that's it, right?
that's it. I think. And
Uh-oh,
I don't know if you can see this, but one of my
is
buddies.
that a sleeping cat?
That's one of my sleepy cats, yes. That's frightening.
We're
That
pretty
cat's
much
ready
done
for an
with,
adjournment.
we're done with our articles tonight, because I'm a little over on my time allotment. So
Okay,
we have anything else
Yeah.
to cover?
No, I think we just need a motion from Paul and we
I
can say
will-
goodnight.
I can quickly do that. I will make a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
All right, could I get a second?
I'll second it.
All right, second by Andy, and I'll just roll call. Amy,
Yes.
Paul,
Aye.
Shardul,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
and yes for me too. Thanks, everybody.
Everybody have a
Thanks for
great
staying
night.
in.
Hit the red button.